Hello and welcome to Kaleidoscope, the podcast, all about change. And my lovely guest today is Rachael Malloy from all the way from Australia. We're getting an international flavour now. Um, Rachel and I met through mutual friends online. We were part of a visibility challenge to raise our visibility online. And I had another guest that was in that group as well earlier in this series, Rachel, and it turns out that was 4 years ago. Would you believe?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a while ago.
that was a while ago. All right, and we've stayed in contact since then and exchanged, not just on Facebook but privately as well all that time. And we were part of a wee business group, four of us who supported each other with our accountability and our challenges and so on and so forth, which has been immense help to me. So, Rachel, I'm going to pass over to you to talk about change. And the four questions that I like to ask are: what was life like before the change? What was life like during the change? What was life like after the change? And what does the future hold? Not that any of us have a crystal ball, but sometimes we can make little bits of predictions. So I'm going to pass over to you and you tell us about whatever change in your life you want to talk about.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about, I suppose, change, and sometimes hindsight is great. If and when I look back at all the big changes in my life, mostly it's been around an event that's brought around a change for me. And I thought about some of these events were quite like what you would consider to be negative events, but in the end, the result ended up quite positive. And each of these events has led me to be where I am now. So I was just thinking of some of my early life events and then working up to now. So, like the big events for me were really losing a home in a bushfire. I was quite ill for a while in my late teens and early 20s. Then obviously there was changes in relationships, which everyone goes through, changes in jobs. And then I suppose my most recent big changes were having children and then a change that we all went through, which was COVID. And all of these were the biggest catalysts of change for me personally. When I reflect on the most recent period of change, which was COVID and which we all went through, there was a lot of uncertainty and feelings of being isolated from friends and family. And this is where you talk about this online connection and where we actually met Valerie. So I I think myself, like everyone, started switching life to online, and things like learning online became the new norm. We had to change the way we worked, we had to change the way we learn, and the way we socialized with other people for a while. At that time, during COVID, I started learning online again. I connected with a beautiful tribe of women, and this is where I actually recall meeting you first. It wasn't I didn't remember the challenge, but now that you've mentioned the challenge, I do remember that as well. And at the time as well, we started as a family, I suppose, connecting more and exploring our beautiful area and doing lots of things like walking by the water. I live quite close to Bondi Beach and Sydney Harbour, so
Right.
we were allowed to walk in those areas. We had like a radius which we could spend time in. I think most people did, and it was very strange to only be given a certain period, but we really, as a family, made the most of it and got out and then just explored nature to try and, I suppose, get so we weren't stressed about what was going on in the world and at the time. Um, then at the time, I also studied to be an EFT practitioner, NLP Master Practitioner, meditation teacher, and I revised my hypnosis skills. So I suppose COVID for me was a real catalyst for me learning and sort of changing I like who I was at that point in time. So for me, it was like the start of a new direction. Like I said, I'd refreshed my learnings and I learned new skills, and I started working as a wellbeing and dream life coach. At that time, I also did something that I've always wanted to do, which was create some affirmation cards. So I did that. And I had my own little Facebook group for connection as well. So, and at the time, I started working with also people who were going through change themselves, whether they'd been made redundant or wanting to start in a new industry for confidence. So working with those type of people. Yeah, and on a personal level, I also found connecting back to my spiritual side again. And I actually started working with the moon and the moon cycles each month. And I found this a great way to like work with change and not fight against the, I guess what I'd call the cycles of change. I personally love working with people to help them through change. I guess what I've discovered over time is change is constant. It's something we are constantly going through. It happens every month, and well, probably every week, every day, whether we like it or not. A lot of the time, we aren't in control of change. And I suppose over time, what I've learnt to do is go with the flow of change and not fight against it, like what I was talking about with the moon cycles. It's something we all go through, and I suppose we can work with change in two ways. We can either go with it and try and think of change as being a positive thing, or we can like try and stamp our foot down and stop change, but change just keeps rolling forward anyway. But for me, I truly believe that one thing leads to another. Chance encounters sometimes bring about change which you wouldn't even expect to happen in your life. And I think this happens, like a lot of us like to have everything organized and down pat and think, well, this is how it's going to be. And sometimes I suppose the universe has a totally different ideas for us anyway. And it's just the way it is. So I think going with the flow, accepting change will happen, and just working through it with yourself or other people if you need help to work through change as well, because sometimes we do.
Absolutely, we do. Absolutely, we do. And the some of the stuff there that I know about you that you haven't said, you used to be in a corporate job in a marketing world, which is how then you can relate to people who have had to make changes due to the economic change during COVID and the economic climate since COVID, that you understand that corporate world and how difficult it can be to accept that the life you know is coming to an end and you have to retrain or whatever, you have to change your life in some way. So you can very much relate to what they're going through. I'm amazed at earlier you'd said we lost our home in a bushfire and there was an illness, and you kind of brushed over that. And I think it's one of those, you accept things in your world as this is just part of our world. This is what happened. Whereas for us here in Northern Ireland and in the UK and wherever else my listeners might be, bushfires would not be a thing that's normal, that happens, and we know, we watch it and we see that they seem to happen almost every year. But for you, it's kind of one of those, because it happens yearly. It's one of those things that happens. Whereas when we're on the other side of the world watching it, we're like, and to lose everything must have been devastating, absolutely devastating.
It really was at the time, and I was only 17 years old, and I think I felt worse for mum and dad who had lost more, but it made me realize through that as well, because I was a bit a type of person who liked to hold on to everything. And the funny thing, well, it's not really funny. The thing about losing everything to a fire, you end up with nothing, and you learn that possessions aren't everything, and the people and what you have in your world is 100 times more important than um, the latest gadget, because it might be gone tomorrow. So that was an I take that event, as hard as it was at the time, as a really good life lesson.
Yeah,
And it's not something I'd wish on to happen on to anyone.
no,
But I remember after it going, like, we were on holidays. We weren't even there when it happened. So literally I had what was in my suitcase. So I came home, and then after it, I'd go to get like a jacket out of my cupboard, and that I think was there, but I no longer had it because it was just
yeah,
gone.
go on.
So that was a strange feeling for a while, but it was, like I said, I did feel like it was a interesting life lesson.
Yeah,
And I suppose that's the my positive spin on a pretty big life event. So yeah, and we lived in the bush. It does happen. I don't live in the bush anymore, probably because I've decided in my world I don't want that to happen again.
yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I suppose it is, and for people that don't experience bushfires every year, it is not normal. But over here, yes, unfortunately, it happens.
Thank you. It was just surprising how, you know, almost flippantly you say it, but it's a part of your history and it's a part of who you are, and therefore it's just something that's there. And I just thank you very much for allowing me to explore that with you for just a little bit.
That's okay.
So I, like you, work with the moon a bit. I wouldn't be anywhere near as informed as you are, which is why most times I just share your information rather than trying to
Oh,
make up
thank
my own.
you.
um, but I love, for me, it's about that, because I know there would be other people that I would work with that would be like, oh, well, that's a bit woo woo. Most of the people I work with are woo woo, so it's fine. But there would be some that would be like, oh, that's a bit woo woo. And for me, working with the moon is more the case of being in touch with nature and the natural cycle of things, and that things do naturally change daily. The sun comes up and the sun goes down. Well, it doesn't. The earth turns and we're in the sun and we're not
Yeah,
daily. So at one point of the day you're looking at blue skies or clouds or whatever, and the next you're looking at night sky and stars, if you can see them through the clouds in our part of the world. Um, so things do, flowers bloom, and for us at this season, we've very windy, very stormy, very blowy. So any leaves that were left are now falling off and becoming compost and so on and so forth. And yet we as humans kind of think, no, no, we shouldn't age. There's this whole thing about not aging and pulling things back and holding them up and all that jazz.
yeah,
Um, but there's something very beautiful. But once you work with nature and you work with that change, there's something very beautiful about embracing change. Um, and so that would be my question for you going, what, like I said earlier, right at the very beginning, we've no crystal balls. We don't know what the future holds. What would you hope? the future would hold for you and your family. Rachel, one of the things you'd said you'd always wanted to do were affirmation cards, which you did, which I have, and which I've bought for other people to give out as presents, as you know.
Yeah.
Is there anything more in the pipeline in that way, that there's change coming about because your business is going to do X, Y, and Z, or work with these people, or?
Well, funny enough you asked that. I just actually popped on Amazon my Dream Life Journal, which I've been working on for the last 2 years, as you know, because
Yeah, so excited.
and that's been a real love effort. But that actually incorporates all the moon cycles and things like gratitude and just all those wonderful things. So I am trying to bring these things that I use in my world to make my world great into as many people's worlds as possible, because it is that's how I believe you get to your dream life, is not by fighting all these sort of things and focusing on what you're grateful for each day and all those wonderful things. It just helps to change the way you look at life. Because I was almost going to answer your question saying, oh, I'm quite happy at the moment. I'm just grateful for what I've got. But obviously there's always things that I want to be achieving. And I suppose from a like if I was talking about what I want to be doing next, I'd like to be working with, I suppose, more people and helping more people, is what I want to be doing. But from a personal perspective, I'm quite happy and grateful for where I am at the
Brilliant.
moment. So
Brilliant. Well, many, many congratulations, because I know that has been a labor of love to
it has been a
get
labour
that
of love.
journal, and it has been, and obviously this was the right time. Before, whenever you were working on it and you were thought you were ready to go and it didn't quite work, that wasn't the right time for you to do it. So I am so pleased you finally, and it's actually on Amazon, is it?
Yeah, I just looked today and it was on there today. So you're the first person I've told,
Yay!
really.
I wish I'd have
So
known. We should have done this after it was launched and I had my copy, and I could have held my copy up and we could have had a conversation about what's in it. I am so delighted for you, Rachel, that you
yeah.
finally, because I know that was a labor of love, because you want this information, and I certainly love the stuff you put in your Facebook about the moon cycles and the moon rituals and so on and so forth. So I'm really, yeah, I'll be going on the Amazon after this. You can send me the link.
Yeah, I can.
Um,
I'll send you a link.
yay.
Yeah.
So we normally finish off with asking your favorite book, favorite phrase, or what you would tell your younger self. I would imagine now your favorite book is the one that you've just published. The reason I put up the three questions, you don't have to answer all three. One of the three would do. But the reason is because I couldn't pick my favorite book. My favorite book is generally what I'm reading right now. So it's entirely up to you if you want to answer one of those questions or three of those questions.
Well, I was thinking about my favorite book, and one of my favorite books that I'd recommend everyone read, and I know you're a fan of this, ladies, as well, is Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. It's one of my all-time favorite books, and she talks in that book about resistance to change and how you can change. So if anyone's wanting to learn a bit more about themselves, she's also one of the most positive person in the world, and who I originally got my, I suppose, idea for affirmation cards. I loved her affirmations, and I, when I was younger, I used to write affirmations to try and help make people feel better. So I suppose she was the reason why I did my affirmations. I don't know whether she ever did a journal book. She probably did. But I never had any of her journals or anything like that. But if she did, so yeah, that would be my I suppose, all, one of my favorite books. I have many books. If I could go back and say something to my younger self, I'd tell them not to worry. Everything's always going to be okay. Things do change. Show up authentically. Just be you, and people will love you for who you are.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. People, the right people will, the people that don't
Love,
love you
yeah,
for you aren't your people. And the people that love you just as you are your people. That whole thing about your tribe that you were saying earlier, absolutely. We were in that vibe tribe, your tribe turn up. Absolutely. Thank you.
yeah.
And your favorite phrase, if you have one?
Oh, I'm going to steal another one of Louise's. I am in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. All is good, all is well. I'm safe.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love that. I usually, you and I are both EFT tappers. We both love EFT tapping, and that's normally what I finish with because I think that's the main thing that our body, when you're going into fight or flight, obviously it's your body doesn't feel safe. And I always finish my tappings with I am safe. When
Yeah,
when I'm doing it with clients, I finish whatever their issue might be, we finish the whole round with I am safe so that the body knows. Because right now, in this moment, if they're sitting with me in a tapping session, they're absolutely safe,
yes,
you
it's
know?
so true. Yeah.
And the more we can get that into our body and know that we're safe right now, the longer we can pull that into the rest of our lives, you know? Brilliant.
Yeah,
Rachel, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Um,
my pleasure.
please send me the link for your book and I put it along with the podcast at the in the descriptor. Um,
Thank you.
one of the things you didn't mention, so she just thanking you. One of the changes you got was you got a little dog.
Oh, yes, we've got a dog, and she keeps me busy, and she keeps me fit and healthy as well. So that's a good change.
Brilliant. So not all changes are negative. Some changes are very, very, very positive. And I think you said that, I think before I hit record, and maybe it was after I hit record, and I love that, is that even if change doesn't feel good at the time, usually where we end up is somewhere better.
Yeah, that's why I said right at the beginning, I think hindsight, you look back and like I challenge a lot of people to look back and look at all the big changes or events that led to changes in their lives and went, oh, yeah, that was actually good because it led me to here, to there, to everywhere. Yeah, anyway, that's just my
Lovely.
take on things.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bella.